10 Titanic facts you need to know. On April 14, 1912, the RMS Titanic sank, bringing to an end its maiden voyage and taking 1,500 innocent souls to the bottom of the ocean. The sheer luxury of the liner made many people think it was unsinkable, but as history showed, they were proven wrong. Its impact on the world is still felt to this day. There remain things that the public are unaware of. Here are 10 Titanic facts you absolutely have to know. 10. A floating gold mine. Even though it took just 2 hours and 40 minutes for the unsinkable RMS Titanic to sink, at the time of its launch the ship was heralded as the height of luxury. Luxury seems an apt description of a ship that cost $7.5 million, $200 million with inflation, to build over a period of 3 years. To add to that sense of luxury, there were $420,000 worth of goods on the ship. That's $11 million today. The ship was captained by Edward J. Smith, who had earned the title Millionaire's Captain due to his popularity with wealthy passengers. Indeed, on board the ship were a number of prominent people such as American businessman Benjamin Guggenheim, British journalist William Thomas Stead, and Macy's department store co-owner ISIDOR STRAUS and his wife Ida. 9. A dangerous warning. Despite what common knowledge would suggest, the Titanic actually received a fair few iceberg warnings before it struck that fateful iceberg. According to Titanic, the Legend, Myths, and Folklore by Bruce Alpine, the Titanic received 3 iceberg warnings from other ships that were in the area on April 14th, as well as 3 messages from the SS Californian, a small steamer that had stopped approximately 19 miles from the luxury liner. Its final haunting warning sent at 11 p.m. was, "We are stopped and surrounded by ice." This has led many to wonder, if the captain had taken notice and slowed down, could the tragedy have been avoided? 8. The tragic tale of John Jacob Astor. The Titanic is often seen as the epitome of wealth and decadence, but the myths barely stand up to the reality. The richest man aboard the Titanic was John Jacob Astor IV, who at the time was widely believed to be the richest man in the world. He was worth an estimated $150 million, or $3.5 billion today. Astor was on the ship, returning home from a months-long honeymoon with his new wife, Madeline Talmadge Force. Force was 28 years younger than Astor, at the tender age of just 18. After putting his young pregnant bride onto a lifeboat, Astor had no choice but to stay on the sinking liner. Astor's body was one of the few that was recovered from the Atlantic Ocean after the ship went down. Amongst the possessions found on him was $2,440, which is roughly $60,000 today. 7. The missing key. The ship's lookouts, Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee, didn't have access to binoculars during the journey. Consequently, they couldn't see very far. The ship's second officer was replaced at the last minute and forgot to hand off the key to the locker that housed the ship's binoculars. As a result, the iceberg wasn't spotted until it was much too late. When the key resurfaced at an auction in 2010, it sold for over $130,000. 6. A mysterious prediction. 2 months before the Titanic was due to depart, a future passenger, Alice Elizabeth Fortune, visited a psychic in Egypt. Fortune was told, "You are in danger every time you travel on the sea, for I see you adrift in an open boat. You will lose everything but your life." Fortune survived the actual sinking but lost her brother and father. In another slightly terrifying prediction, the disaster was foretold in a pair of books about cruise line disasters. The Sinking of a Modern Liner by W.T. Stead, published in 1886, and Wreck of the Titan by Morgan Robertson, published in 1898. Stead was on the Titanic when it sank. Spooky, isn't it? How do you think Stead knew what was going to happen? 5. A Cold War front. The expedition which uncovered the ruins of the Titanic in 1985 was a front for the U.S. to recover 2 Cold War submarines. The expedition was led by former U.S. Naval Intelligence Officer Dr. Robert Ballard. Ballard has since said that he was tasked by President Ronald Reagan with carrying out the search to find the 2 lost submarines. Ballard has said that, conveniently, between the 2 submarines was the wreckage of the Titanic. Ballard has claimed he only had 12 days left to find the submarines when he found the wreckage. At the time, the research team released photos of the wreckage but claimed they had no plans to salvage the ship or explore what was on it. However, the following year, Ballard returned to the site and made 11 dives to the scene. It raises the question just what they found and why it required so many dives. 4. A dead deserter. Roger Bricoux was the Titanic's cello player and was just 21 years old when he perished during the ship's sinking. However, he wasn't officially declared dead until 2000, even though all the musicians died when the ship sank. The French army even called him a deserter when he failed to show up for service in World War I. For 88 years, the French Association of the Titanic worked to clear his name, eventually succeeding in 2000. 3. A Hollywood icon was rescued. Actress Dorothy Gibson was one of the most popular silent movie stars of the time when she traveled aboard the Titanic. Gibson was traveling back from Italy to Fort Lee to begin work on several motion pictures when the disaster struck. Fortunately, Dorothy was one of the lucky few who managed to survive the Titanic sinking. She starred in a movie called Saved from the Titanic that was released just 1 month after the ship sank. She wore the same clothes and shoes on the movie that she'd worn during the actual voyage. According to sources from the time, Dorothy was hesitant to relive the ordeal she'd just been through, but decided to go through with the movie. However, she gave up acting shortly after the release of the movie and pursued a career in opera, which was also just as brief as her career in acting. 2. A teacher with survivor's guilt? Lawrence Beasley was a science teacher at Dulwich College when he decided to travel on the Titanic. Though he survived the ship's sinking, he was left traumatized by the event and tried to jump into the scene that depicted the ship sinking in order to symbolically go down with the ship in 1958's A Night to Remember. The movie's director, Roy Ward Baker, refused, as allowing such a thing would have been a union violation. These events are parodied in Julian Barnes' novel A History of the World. Beasley was a survivor from the second class and wrote a memoir about his experience entitled The Loss of SS Titanic. He is also the grandfather of New York Times science editor Nicholas Wade. 1. The last Titanic survivor. The last survivor of the Titanic died at the age of 97 in 2009 after catching pneumonia. MILLVINA Dean was just 2 months old and was the youngest passenger on the ship, which she boarded with her parents and brother. The Deans had decided to leave Britain for America, where her father had family in Kansas and where they hoped to open up a tobacco shop. Originally, the Deans weren't supposed to be on the Titanic, but because of a coal strike, they were transferred to the ship and boarded as third-class passengers at Southampton. Dean's father had felt the crunch of the ship's collision with the iceberg on the night of 14th April 1912 and had ventured up to investigate. He returned and told his wife to dress the children and to go up on deck. Alongside her mother and brother, Dean was placed on a lifeboat and was amongst the first off the liner. Her father, however, remained on the ship and was amongst those who drowned when the Titanic eventually went down. Dean had worked as a secretary until her retirement and had lived in Ashurst in the New Forest, not too far from where she had set sail on the Titanic. In the last year of her life, she had to sell some of her family's possessions to pay for her stay in a nursing home. News of this auction inspired Titanic director James Cameron, alongside stars Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio, to come together to pay her nursing home fees just before her death. There you have it. These are the 10 Titanic facts you need to know. If you have any more facts about the Titanic, comment below.